Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. What's your clean time?
So my sobriety date is January 13th of 2020.
So you got a little over 4.5 years now.
Yeah. Yep.
You said January
Absolutely.
8th,
January 13th.
13th.
Yep.
So what was going
Absolutely.
on? What was going on
Absolutely.
January 12th?
um, well, let's see. I got caught a charge twice that day. Just got out of jail January 6th. Um, and a couple of paraphernalia charges right back to back. And that was coming from just before Christmas to the day I got help. Man, it was bad. It was bad.
So you were in jail during Christmas of 2019.
No, I got out. I was only in there for 2 weeks. It was
Okay.
heck, I don't even remember what it was for. Um, but yeah, yeah, there was a warrant in another county, and what had happened was I I was on like a 4 or 5 day bender up for a few days, and um, I was out walking, or I was at a friend's house, and I asked him to just keep an eye on me for the rest of the night. Just let me crash, and I would stay up and party. Uh, then all the night, just let me crash and keep an eye on me. Well, I was I guess I was in a blackout. I couldn't remember, wasn't coherent anything I was doing, and he was getting mad. I kept snapping back too, and just remember him getting mad. I must have been bumping into stuff, um, whatever, doing whatever we do, and I was like, you know what, I don't need to do this. And this was maybe I was in for Christmas, because no, it might have been just after Christmas. So I was like, I don't need to put up with this. So I took off walking. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, middle of winter, up by Lake Erie in Ohio, and took off walking. And that was the last thing I remember, was leaving his house. And um, I ended up being found out in the middle of a field, soaking wet. Uh, I just remember being so cold. I heard somebody yelling, um, and it kind of woke me up. So I stood up and looked over, and there was a county sheriff, and um, there was like three other police officers from the different towns walking out to the field, and um, that's what got me arrested. I had, some paraphernalia on me, and they took me to the county jail. I just remember being so cold, being out there, and asked them what time it was, and it was like 8:30 in the morning. So, I was out there in the middle of winter, walking through these empty fields. Uh, I probably could have froze to death, if it wasn't for one of the neighbors, one of the country houses there, calling the police saying that they seen somebody out there walking in the field. Who knows how long I would have been out there.
What was your bender on? What kind of paraphernalia did you have?
Uh, Needles.
Okay.
I had needles on me. It didn't start right away with the needles. You know what I mean?
Well, let's
Um,
backtrack. So you're from Ohio.
from Ohio. Yep.
Did you see me through Ashley's page?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. She's been on here like a handful of times.
Yeah. So I've known Ashley for a while now, um, through recovery, um, and yeah, she's good people.
Yeah, she's always a fun time whenever she comes on. We always have, different things to talk about. And she's always completely blatantly honest. I've actually had so many Ohio people on the show, and not even on purpose. Like I'm not even from Ohio, but I've had probably like 12 people, I think, from Ohio on the show. At one point, I had like a 6-person panel episode where it was like 6 different girls from Ohio that didn't even know each other.
Yeah.
Um, 2 of them knew each other from when they were both being trafficked together at the same time, and they hadn't seen each other in like 4 years. And then they did my show together, and they got to talk for the first time in 4 years since they got
Wow.
clean. And they both were like, I saw your episode getting posted, and I was like, oh my God, I know her. Like they both said the same thing, like, oh my God, I know that person.
Yeah. That's pretty
So
cool.
yeah, so you're from Ohio. When did you like? Are you the only child? Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I got a younger sister. She's 2 years younger than me. My parents were together all through my childhood. They ended up divorcing. I might have been 18, might have just graduated. Um, my dad has since married. He's been with my stepmom for quite a lot of years now. Um, and both my parents still live here in Ohio.
Now, what were you introduced to first, drugs or alcohol?
It was the alcohol. I think I drank first. And that was that was just an innocent school parties, I mean, I can remember back my grandma. I was maybe 9, 10, and my grandma would sit out and watch me ride my bike up and down the driveway, and she'd have her wine coolers, and when she would go inside, I tell you what, them wine coolers tasted like Kool-Aid, a little juice box. So I can remember always sneaking swigs of that, but I didn't have my first drunk until I was maybe middle school, and it started with alcohol, and it wasn't I don't believe it was really addictive behavior back then. It was it was just drinking. The first time I got drunk was with some warm steel reserves in the back of a Ford Bronco, and it was more of the rush of doing something I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing. And I can remember sitting back there and just getting drunk, and I remember everything about it. We sat in that Bronco forever, and then when we went to get out is when like everything started to spin, and I puked everywhere, hated every minute of it, said I was never going to drink again, and here I go years down the road. And
to me, it was almost like a rite of passage. I had my first drink when I was 11, and I was sneaking Captain Morgan and drinking Captain and Coke. And my friend and I, he would sleep over on a Saturday night, and we would sneak into my parents' basement where we knew that the liquor was hidden. Because my parents weren't big drinkers, but they threw big parties. And when the parties were done, the liquor was left over in the basement. So we would go down there and like pour into a cup and then come upstairs and pour Coke into it and drink Captain and Cokes. And we watched like The Outsiders thinking we were cool. You know what I mean? Watching these kids drink and we're drinking too. And then when I was 12, a friend of ours passed away. He was hit by a car. And I remember saying to him, like, hey, if we drink, we're going to feel better. And right then and there is me drinking as an alcoholic at 12 because I was drinking for the effect and not, because it was for fun. It was for a reason. And to me, that's drinking alcoholically. When I was 13, it was Y2K going into year 2000. And that's my first blackout where I was doing like not Jaeger bombs. What are they called? Kamikazes. I was drinking kamikazes all night when I was in 7th grade at a New Year's Eve party. I just kept getting handed these cups of kamikaze and just pounding them down. And that was my first blackout. And it sure as shit didn't stop me. For the rest of 7th and 8th grade, I was getting drunk on the weekends. So I know what you mean. Like it was supposed to be for fun. And then once I started getting bullied because I was a big kid, I started using that as like, okay, well, I had a rough day at school. I'm going to drink tonight.
Right.
And it wasn't just because, yeah, exactly. And then I discovered weed when I was 13. So that was like, took me off on another ramp. Did you ever get into smoking weed too?
Oh yeah. I mean, I smoked a lot in high school, and for as much as I smoked pot, like I sit here and say, like, I don't even like smoking pot. You know, I didn't like it, but that, like, what we do, you know, we do it for the effect, and you know, the effect. I just didn't like being myself. You know, um, I really didn't like being myself. All through growing up, I always felt like I didn't fit in. You know, I always felt that you know, the other kids had more money, and you know, I was in sports all the time, and my parents, they got me anything that I would ever need for sports, but these other kids always seemed to have something better, and they treated each other, which I felt different than what they treated me, you know.
What
And
sports
so
did you play?
I was wrestling, football, and baseball. It was
I was football and baseball and hockey.
yeah,
I played street hockey in the winter. I played football in the spring or in the fall, and I played baseball in the spring.
yep. I was year round too, man.
Yep.
It was good, but you know, and that's actually where it was a wrestling injury in high school is what got me onto the opiates, and that's where that all started, you know. And um, if you want to get there, you
Yeah,
want to get
yeah,
there.
I want, yeah. I mean, so how old were you?
I was a sophomore in high school.
So call it 16.
Yeah,
And you got hurt. And what did they prescribe you?
Perk fives. They gave me the 5 milligram Percocets, and um, just taking them as prescribed. I like how they made me feel, you know. And then I
Oh,
realized,
I know. I
yeah,
was addicted to opiates, and I remember my first two. I remember my first time taking 210s. We
mm-hmm.
called them bananas, or we called them school buses,
And the
depending
school
on
buses, the big yellow ones. Yep.
the big yellow ones. Yep. And I took two of them, and I was off to the races. And
Mm-hmm.
that's I know exactly what that feeling was when the first
Yeah.
time you do it.
Yeah. And so it was, you know, just taking them as prescribed. Um, and then that curiosity, like, I wonder what I'll feel like if I take two, you know, and then that started to happen. And you know, I just said this about smoking pot, but I didn't really like drinking either because I'm a big puker. I will drink and I keep going until I throw up, you know, and I
Yep.
hated
Me too.
puking. I hate puking. And so I soon realized that by taking those, I wouldn't have to drink as much to get to where I wanted to be, you know? And so it started to be a mixture of things. I remember my dad would have like a bottle of Everclear underneath the kitchen sink, you know? And so here I am mixing it with Gatorade. Um, I'm, I'm going through the cups and I'm grabbing codeine and cough medicine out of our cabinets and just taking it to school and chugging the bottle in school, you know, and then seeing that it's got one or two refills. And I'm from a small town, you know, so I go up to the pharmacy and hand them the bottle and say, hey, you know, I'm supposed to get a refill of this. And they refill it those couple times. And um, school and sports didn't stop me. You know, as much as I loved sports, I just loved getting messed up even more. You know.
I didn't even play football my senior year. I didn't play any sports my senior year because it was getting in the way of my drinking. You know, like I wanted to drink every single school night and not just on the weekends anymore. I think I went on and this is something I used to brag about, you know what I mean? But like I went on a stretch where I drank for 65 straight days, at least a 6-pack a day.
Mm,
And I'm 18 years old, a senior in high
yeah.
school. Like I shouldn't be drinking every single day. And here I am in my senior year, and that's exactly what I was doing. I was smoking every day. I was drinking every day. I've been smoking cigarettes since I was 13 years old, too. So I'm 38 now. So you're talking 25 years of smoking. I just quit smoking weed 4 months ago. So, you're talking a long stretch for me. Even when I first got clean, I went to a rehab in Los Angeles that taught you how to use marijuana as a maintenance program. So, and it worked for a while. And then once my dad passed away, I started smoking every day.
Yeah.
And I don't mean smoking every day, I mean smoking all day, every day. And then I got prescribed benzos because I was depressed after my dad passed. And I have a psychiatrist. And he was like, here, try Ativan. That's not working. Try Valium.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned that you can snort Valium and actually get an effect. So next thing you know, I'm snorting Valium. So I've definitely had my little, I have different anniversary dates for each thing. You know what I mean? Like I have opiates, I'm clean 6 years, alcohol 4.5 years, and benzos and weed 4 months.
Good.
So, you're allowed to smoke on here. It doesn't matter. So people smoke cigarettes on here. It doesn't trigger me or anything.
Yeah.
So now how don't you run out of the bottle eventually for the perks when you're in school?
Yeah. And I wasn't getting sick, right? Or at least I didn't know what being sick was back then. So I'm 17, 18, or not even 18 yet, 16, 17. And I'm working under the table with my cousin. He was working for a landscaping company, and I would work there, right? And so, doing what we do, I'm, out at a house doing somebody's landscape, asking if I can use the restroom, that I have to use the restroom. And I'm checking medicine cabinets, and that's what I would do. And I knew what medicines would give me the effect that I wanted, at that early age. I knew what I wanted. And, it was doing that. And I'd go to the doctor. So what had happened with that injury is I dislocated my hip in a match. And like my whole body went sideways on top of my straight leg. And my hip popped out, and then it popped back in. And so, you're at the doctor and you're saying this stuff isn't working. So they give you a little bit more, or they up your dose. You tell them, you play the game. These are making my stomach hurt. Too much aspirin in. I need something a little less aspirin in. So they'll give me, something a little stronger with less aspirin. And that was all through high school. That was all through high school doing that. Yep.
Yeah, we learn real quick, what's working and what's not working when it comes to medications. I remember the first pills I took that weren't mine was Somas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would take them every day during school. I remember I worked at a CVS and I was a cashier, and my friend who sold Somas would come in and he smoked cigarettes too. I would grab like 4 packs of cigarettes and I would pretend to scan them, and he would buy a drink, and I would put him in the bag with his drink, and he would pay $2 for his drink and get 4 packs of cigarettes. And that was my hint to him of, I want 6 or 8 Somas, because he would sell them to me for 50 cents a piece. Mm-hmm. So I would get 8 for, he give him 4 packs of cigarettes and get 8 or 10 or whatever Somas out of it.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, that's how we had like an arrangement. And man, no good.
Them Soma comas.
Yeah, I would take them before school because like I said, I drank for 65 straight nights. And that shit, you're hungover as hell when you're in school and you're sitting there at 7:30 in first period wanting to die. But you pop a Soma, you're sitting in the back of the class and you're on cloud 9. You don't care what the hell they're talking about up in the front of the class. I was in, what class was that too? It was such a random class. and it was, well, I think the funniest thing was I used to go to business ethics in college high as shit. Like business ethics, I was just getting high right before, and I always thought it was funny that I was in a class about being ethical, and here I am smoking before it.
And like I always had a way to get something at an early age. You know, I have older cousins, you know, who like to drink and party. You know, they're not one like me, but they partied in high school. You know, so here I am in sixth, seventh, eighth grade, and they're in high school, and that was like a way to get my hands on things. You know, um, I could remember always getting high in school. You know, and I had a first period I had a cooking class. So my friend would come pick me up. We'd swing uptown, grab some breakfast to take with us because we were allowed to eat in that class. We'd smoke on the way to school, get high, get in there, and so I had first period that cooking class. Second period I had um, like gym. It was a advanced PE class, and I can remember always I'd go in and into the locker room and I'd have a lock and I put my stuff in the locker room. And we would after second period we'd smoke again, you know, right there in the locker room, and then go over to third period art, you know, and then I had just before lunch I took Spanish, right? So just before lunch, and I would always get in an argument with this teacher, and he would always kick me out and send me to the office, but he would never check in with the office. So I would go right back to the locker room, smoke another bowl, and then wait until that bell rang for lunch, and I'd have lunch right afterwards. That's what my high school was. You know, it was getting high, and I tell you what, if it wasn't for a lot of the people around me helping me with work, like I was super lazy in school, you know, and um, I was good at sports, right? So if I would get close to getting ineligible, I had the coaches going and talking to my teachers, asking them what I can do to bring my grades up so I could still play. You
Yeah.
know, so I had this sense of entitlement all the way back in high school. Like, you know, even if I am ineligible, somebody else will take care of it. You know, and that's what my life all has always been up until the day I got sober. It was always somebody else's problem or somebody else take care of me. You know, I was never uh, responsible for my own self ever.
I got kicked out of math a lot. I would get in arguments with the teacher, and she was so fed up with our class that she ended up quitting after 35 years after
Oh,
our class
jeez.
moved on. She was so tired of teaching after she dealt with us for a year. She kicked me out of the class, and I don't mean like she kicked me out daily, but I got kicked permanently out of the class halfway through my senior year and had to go to another math class to finish out my year. I was failing miserably in her class. I'm talking like 30 grade average, like a 30 average for the semester, another 30 average, like a zero on my midterm, like all
Yeah.
that shit. And I got into the other class and I was getting hundreds in everything. And he was like, "So it was just you and her have button heads. Like you actually know math." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, then you understand that you're going to fail this year because of how low your grades were before." And I was like, "Yeah, I understand that." He was like, "But I like you and you're doing a really good job, and she's going to check on your grades. I'm going to make all your averages 69s so that they're all high Fs. This way you'll pass with a C." And I was like, "Hey, whatever you want to do to help me along, I appreciate it." Like, so again, like you said, I was a good manipulator. I
Oh
knew how
yeah.
to manipulate my situations. So just like you said, you got away with it. I got away with it too. So I completely know what you're saying. Like I got out of my own mess. And then your ego grows
Oh yep.
from
Yep.
experiences
Yep.
to the point where I was, business ethics was my first year in college. And I'm like, I'm going to get high as shit before I go learn about ethics. And that's going to be funny to me. And I did, and I got an A, and I learned 0 lessons from it. So it is, so when did you make the jump from pill? Did you ever make the jump from pills into heroin? Obviously, because you got stuck with caught with needles.
Yeah. Yep. So it the the pills were, ever since that first doctor prescribed me, um, they took me to the hospital the day of, right? They took me right off the mat, put me on a gurney, took me to the hospital. I could barely move, and when they got me to the hospital, they hooked me up to an IV and they gave me a couple shots of Demerol and a shot of Valium to calm me down and release the pain. And I tell you what, man, when that sensation hit my body, it was wow, it just wow. And as a joke, when I was leaving the hospital, the nurse was like, "Is there anything else I could do for you? You need anything?" I was like, "Yeah, can you guys give me another one of them shots?" And my mom and my grandma were there, and they kind of laughed about it. But so it was pills all through there. But I'm not gonna do heroin, right? I always tell myself that. I'm not a drug addict like that. And then once I graduated, I started working in a factory and got introduced to like the Oxy 80s. I got a line on the Oxy 80s and was like, man, these, these are even stronger. These are good, and
That's when they were like $40 too.
yeah, yeah. And, here I am walking around with, a pocket full of 80s, and I got my little shaver and everything in my other pocket. And, but again, I'm not going to do heroin because
Yeah.
like, even if you speak about heroin to a non-alcoholic or a non-addict, that the reaction, is like, dang, heroin. And that's kind of where I was. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that stuff. um so Oxy 80s, then the Opanas, and I was sick one day. And the only thing that person had was some powder heroin,
So
and
you were actually sick, or you were sick, dope sick, and you didn't realize you were dope sick?
I was no, this had progressed. I knew, like, I was doing this for long enough now that I knew what being sick was. I couldn't go without. Um, can't go to work unless I have something. Uh, Leaving work at 11 o'clock because I didn't have nothing, and dude finally hit me back, so I gotta go pick up, or he's meeting me at work. Um, so it progressed to where I knew what the heck was going on.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember there was one time where he came to my work and came inside and he pretended like he was looking for TVs, and then we walked into the room where I knew there was no cameras and we did our transaction in there.
yeah,
Then I went into the bathroom and I had a straw in my pocket, and like a full size straw, and my move was always to fold the straw in half and drop the pills into it and chew the straw to make
okay,
them powder and then extend it and
okay,
just put it like that. And I could do them in the bathroom real quick without having to make a mess or put my lines out or anything.
yeah,
And there was one day where he couldn't come to my work. He was just stuck. And I'm dope sick as hell. And this one guy was like, "Hey man, I know that you're sick. I can see it in your face." And he shot heroin every day. And he was like, "I have some dope on me. If you want, I can go set you up a line in the bathroom." And I was like, you know what? I think that's probably a good idea. And then a minute later, I'm not even exaggerating, a minute later, the guy texted me saying, "Hey, I'm on my way to you now."
mm,
And I was like, "Nope, don't have to do it now. I got my shit coming on the way." And I still to this day never did heroin. And I know if I would have did that one line for, a $110 line, I would have been off to the races heading to the heroin. Still to this day, I know that's a
yeah,
turning point in my addiction where I could have easily strayed and went even harder. And I just
yeah,
got lucky, whatever higher power you believe in. mine stepped in and was like, nope, we're gonna get you your oxys, calm down. Because I was addicted to Roxy 30s, the little blue guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about how you said that you were dope sick and the only thing you could get was heroin.
Yep. And so did a line of that, and it got me right. And it, in my alcoholic brain, it's like, man, this is cheaper, and it does what it needs to do. This is this is what I need to start getting. And so that's what it was. And it was always snorting stuff. I got a big hole up in my nose. If I push my nose this way, it makes a loud pop.
I could hear
Yeah, it's nuts. And I that's what it was. It was just snorting it. And once I crossed that line of actually doing heroin, a new line was drawn. At
that's
least
how,
I'm not using a needle.
that's how I felt about me with almost going into heroin. Was that would have been a new, well, I'm never going to stick a needle in my arm. I'm just going to snort it. And I didn't find out that you could smoke 30s until I was in rehab. You learn shit.
And I tried that, and I didn't like it. Like I didn't like the it didn't hit me how I wanted it to hit me. You know what I mean?
I never tried it. I was a snorter all the way through.
Yeah.
I got lucky.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm still lucky to this. I remember in rehab, a girl was like, "You got amazing veins. You must not have ever shot anything."
Listen,
like
listen. I've
only an
tried
addict would point out somebody's veins.
I've tried to give blood so many times in sobriety, and I'm maybe one day they'll come back, but like just at work, maybe like 2 months ago they were doing a blood drive, and I'm like, oh, all right, I'll give it another shot, and they didn't even attempt to poke me. They tried one tourniquet on the one arm, couldn't find it. They tried another one, tried the other arm, and they're like, we're not gonna try. We're not gonna. Like, yeah, I get it. It's fine.
So how old in your 20s was it when you made that turn to snorting heroin?
I was probably 23, probably somewhere around there.
Okay.
And like I said, it was so then that was just added to the buffet, right? So I'm getting that when I can, because I didn't know my avenues that I had for there yet. I just knew this one avenue because it was there. And then I still got all my avenues for the oxys and stuff like that. So it was just added to the buffet. One more thing. And then, the same thing happened on how I used the needle for the first time. Was I was sick, and the only thing that I could get was tar, and they're like, this is how you got to do it. I'm like, I don't care what you got to do. I don't know what I'm doing, so you do it. And that was the first time. It was somebody else shooting me up for the first time as the first time that I used a needle. And then from that moment, it didn't matter what I was getting high with. It went through a needle.
That's how a lot, like, I've interviewed over 160 people for this show, and a lot of people were opiates, as you can imagine. And a lot of them told me the same thing, that they weren't sure what to do the first time and somebody else did it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a very common thing that I hear a lot is, I didn't know what I was doing the first time I shot heroin, but the person I was with knew how to do it and they shot it for me. And, whether it was heroin or meth, I've heard the same thing about everything. And people are always surprised I never shot anything because I have a bunch of tattoos. They're like, what, you don't like needles? I'm like, and never got to that point where I was desperate enough, because that's what it comes down to, is you're in desperate measures, because you get tar, you can't snort tar.
Yeah. I've seen people mix it up with water, some warm water in a spoon, and pour it up their nose, same thing with What's that?
That's just a waste of money in comparison to what you get out of it if you can shoot
Yeah,
it.
yeah, um, yeah. And you know, there towards the end of me snorting, like I'm gagging every time because I got this hole in my nose, you know, and uh, I just didn't like doing that anymore. And my nose needed a break, and still to this day, I got nasal problems. You know, your straw story, you know, that putting in a straw is to an addict, that's genius. You know, I never thought of that. I used to
I would
I used
stick
to take
four in there.
yeah, I used to take bottles of nasal spray, right? And I would, if I was, if I had some cocaine or whatever dope I would have, I would make my own little mixture and put it in my nasal spray. So, like, I'd just be out in public and it was like doing a little nasal
Yeah,
spray bump every
you
once in
should
a
have
while, you
saw.
know?
You should have saw my center console, bro. My center console was filled with bent up straws because the last 2 years of my addiction, I was driving 2 hours to and from getting my pills. And because I didn't know any, I lived in like Lancaster, Amish country in Pennsylvania. And I would drive 2 hours to South Jersey, where I was originally from, to pick up pills and drive back.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with the straw trick because I was constantly in my car and I
Yeah.
was always dope sick by the I would be in traffic in Philly and dope sick throwing up into a bag because you know when you're that dope sick where you start throwing up bile. I would be throwing up into a bag and then as I got closer to my destination, I would get more and more sick. And by the time I actually would get to my possession, I didn't have time to get a CD case out and break them up onto a CD case. Then you crack the CD case, and then the pills are falling in the crack. So I had a straw that I would cut the tip off, and it was like a 3/4 of a straw, and it was already bent up from me cutting it. I was like, oh shit, I can just put the pill in there and just break it up with my teeth. And I realized that I could be driving 90 miles per hour on the highway and I could bank 30s through my nose just by doing that. So you end
That's
up
good.
doing a lot. It's the ways and means. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I lost
Absolutely.
my gallbladder because of how much bile I lost over the
Oh,
years.
wow.
Like completely damaged my gallbladder. It was like by the time they figured out what was wrong with my stomach, my gallbladder was 99% ineffective.
Jeez.
You're talking 1% working. And they're like, we got to take that out because it's
Yeah.
making you sick. I'm like 2 years into recovery or 3 years into recovery, getting my gallbladder removed. Maybe it was 2021, June of 2021. So I was 3 years into recovery when I had my gallbladder taken out.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, I said, listen, don't give me any opiates. Like I'm in recovery and I can't have opiates and at all. They're like, okay. I wake up, dude, and I was high as shit. And I said to the nurse, like, hey, I'm really, really high right now. What did you guys give me? She was like, oh, it's probably just from, the knocking you at anesthesia. And the doctor walked in. I said, what else besides the anesthesia? They're like, well, you looked really uncomfortable. So we gave you a shot of the Dilaudid and a shot of fentanyl. I'm like, dude, I'm going to go into withdrawals. He's like, no, you're fine. We're doctors. We know what we were doing.
Mm.
It was an outpatient surgery. As soon as I got outside, I started throwing up. And I threw up for 18 hours, dude.
Jeez.
Like I told them I'm going to go into withdrawal. They didn't believe me. You know what I mean? And I had 6 incisions in my stomach from the gallbladder being removed. And I'm sitting there with a pillow over my stomach trying to hold them in place while I'm throwing up for the next 18 hours. I was so pissed off with those doctors.
Man.
Like, how are you going to give me fentanyl and Dilaudid in the same shot? Like, that's really unnecessary, dude.
You know, you always get that kind of stuff when you don't want it. You know,
I know, right?
Anytime I tried to go to the hospital for anything, you know, I couldn't get nothing.
You're not getting shit. You're not getting shit.
Yeah. And then the day I get sober and I go to the hospital and they were wanting to give me all this stuff, I'm like, no, I can't have. I was maybe maybe 5 months sober, and I was out at work and I sliced my thumb right in the crease, and I just wrapped it up and cleaned it and left it at that, and I was showing a couple people and they're like, man, you gotta go get stitches, like that's way too deep, you gotta go get stitches. So I went and got stitches, and so this was during like COVID time because I got sober in
Yeah, I was just
January,
about to say,
right?
yeah.
So I wasn't allowed to have anybody in the hospital with me because I wanted
Yep.
to have a friend there with me for some accountability. And so I'm in there sitting by myself, and they have the room separated down the middle by a sheet. So it was me
Yeah.
and another lady, and I'm sitting there just my hand in some soaking in some whatever cleaner or whatever before they come and stitch me up. And this lady next to me, she must have did something to her back. Like she's in super pain, like that when you pull a muscle in your back and it hurts to breathe. Like that's where
Yep.
she was at. And like I told the nurses, told the doctor, no opiates. Like I can't have anything. Whatever you do with this, like I can't have any opiates. So they put this lady in there, and she's in there with back pain, and um, she's like, I need something for the pain. And I heard the doctor say, we're going to give you a little shot of fentanyl to make you more comfortable. And my ears perked up, like, you're going to do what? And like all that was fine. All that didn't get to me. It was the moment when they gave her that shot and I heard her go, ah, and
Yep.
oh my gosh, like I felt sweat coming on my head. I'm like, I got to get out of here, and I'm in the hallway, and I'm trying to call my sponsor, and the nurses are like, you can't be in the hallway, you gotta go in your room. I'm like, look, I gotta make this call. And they're like, well, you can't be here in the hallway. I said, is there a bathroom or something I can go, because I can't be in there? And they're like, there's a bathroom at the end of the hall. So I went to the bathroom and I called my sponsor, told him what happened. I was like, man, what the heck?
I knew
Just
exactly the relief of the you were going to say. Like I said it with you because I know that sense of my wife has MS, and there was a time where she
mm,
needed to be shot with fentanyl. And I remember being with her, and I saw like her eyes do that thing of like,
yeah,
just getting
yeah,
really wide eyed.
yep,
And I'm like, I know that feeling. I know
yep,
exactly that
yeah.
feeling.
That was always that. That's what I was always chasing, was that feeling right there.
Yep. That one time where you actually got high, then because like let's be real, the first couple times you actually got high, and the rest of the times you're chasing that one high. You
Sure,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
or you're just trying to get right again. And people that
yeah,
don't know what get right means, it means that we would do enough to feel normal because we would wake up in so much pain and agony, withdrawal, that we had to do some just so we can feel like a normal person.
yeah,
And most of the people that are addicts, they're not even getting high anymore. They're just getting right.
yeah, yeah. That's a struggle in itself, just to get right. I mean, it got to a point where, I couldn't do anything without having something. I would make plans and cancel plans because I couldn't go to it if I didn't have nothing.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do something, I got to make sure I have enough to get me through that and tomorrow. Um,
I turned down a free trip to the United Kingdom and Scotland. My family was going to take me with them, and I was like, no, it's okay. I'd rather just stay and work and take care of the dogs because
yeah,
my brother and my dad and I had a plumbing business. And that was my excuse was, no, I'm going to stay back with the business and I'll make sure everything's good here. We all have dogs in our family. So I was like, I'll just take care of all the dogs. We don't have to hire a sitter, and I'll just take care of the dogs and I'll work and I'll make sure everything's good with the business.
mhm,
But for real, it meant that I can't go anywhere without my pills.
yep,
And dude, I remember this was how desperate I was. I had my dog and my brother's dog in my back seat, and I was driving to Jersey where my parents had a house, and they had a black lab there. So I had to take my brother's dog and my dog with me to Jersey so I could watch all three dogs. We get into the car, We drive a mile away. We're about to get on the ramp for the PA Turnpike. And if I would have got onto this ramp, I wouldn't have been able to turn around for 17 miles because that's the next exit. I made the left to turn. All of a sudden, I heard my dog puking in the back, and she covered the back seat with puke. I turned around, I went back. My brother left his car there just in case I needed it for emergencies. So I put both dogs in his back seat. I parked in the garage, put all my windows down. I said, fuck cleaning it right now. I got to go because I'm withdrawing. I got to go to Jersey. I don't care what stopped me. I don't care if my car is going to smell like shit. I'm not driving it. I hopped in my brother's car and did the drive in his car and went and got right. And that was a shit show all in itself when I was house sitting for the week.
Isn't it such a blessing to be free from that?
Oh my God. The running around, the craziness,
yes.
The phone calls, the text messages, my dealer had an iPhone. I had an iPhone, so I would see the little bubbles pop up when he would be next to me.
Yeah.
And I would send him a text like, hey, you good? And I would just stare at my phone for hours waiting to see those bubbles pop up just so I knew he was ready to meet me because he did a tow truck business. So I would have to meet him while he was out on the road and, taking a truck or whatever. He was a tow truck operator. So I would have to meet him in the most random places sometimes in order to get more. But I was also selling through him. I had a bunch of people that always needed shit, and I would make $5 a pop off all the sales and get a bunch for free. So sometimes I would go to Jersey with no money, but sell 30 pills and make $150.
Yeah.
And not really make any money because all that 150 went right back into how many pills I was going to buy. Where you do that math, like if I sell this many, I can get this many for free.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And it was like getting sober was scary because I was so used to that chaos and that chaotic life. I didn't know what it was like to be sober. I definitely didn't think it was possible. Definitely didn't think it was possible for a person like me. So
were you unemployed from the dope?
Oh yeah. Every job that I had, I would get fired, and I would tell myself, you're young, you're a real good worker. When I'm sober, or when I'm actually working, I know I'm a good worker. I'm a good hard worker. And so when I would get fired, I would just brush it off. You're young, you're a good worker. You'd be able to find another good job. I ran through so many good jobs. I'm going out for my 15-minute break in my car to, do a little bit and pass out and wake up 45 minutes later and try sneaking back inside. That only works for so many times. And then that last time I had a supervisor knock on my window, he's like, we got to go take a drug test. We can't be doing this.
The same shit happened to me, dude. I was out and I was snorting 30s on my break while I was chain smoking. And I went back inside and my pupils must have been dilated as fuck because I had just snorted like 430s and I was out in the sun. So it was like double for my eyes to be, all dilated. And I walked in, he goes, hey, want to take a ride to the other store with me to pick up some stuff? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. It gets me out of working for a little bit. Yeah, sure. And we get into the car and he's like, I'm taking you for a random drug test. I'm like, fuck.
Yep, like, it's over. And then, once I lost that job, it was all bets were off, so backing up a little bit, I have a daughter. She just turned 11 in July. So back when I first found out that she was about to be born, I thought that was my saving grace. This is what's going to straighten me up, she was born, and I got off the hard stuff. I got put on subs, but my way of living didn't change. Nothing changed. I went from, doing the dope to doing subs now. And I'm doing subs so much that I'm running through prescriptions and I'm buying them off the streets, I was able to manage my life a little better, but it was just trading one thing for the next, you know, um, and then uh, she was maybe 4 years old at the time, and four, maybe five, and me and her mom went through a pretty rough breakup, you know, and so when that happened, I said screw it, you know, and I got back on the dope, and that's when, you know, my production at work went down. I didn't care about anything. I She was actually still living with me for a while until I uh, asked her to leave. I made her leave, you know, and so then it was just me and my daughter, and that worked for about a week. And you know, as crappy as this thing as it is for me to say this, but this is exactly how it was. Is that she was getting in the way of doing what I wanted, you know, having my daughter there. And I got a hold of her grandma and asked her grandma, you know, to take her. And so when she did that, that's when I had no responsibility, didn't have a job, um, didn't have my daughter to take care of, and it was just off and running. You know, my house became just a crash spot that I'm just getting high in, trash everywhere. Wasn't paying bills. Um, Landlord threatens to evict me, gives me a date, and I stayed there all the way till that date. And I had, you know, all my stuff there at that house, and you know, all my fishing stuff from you know, stuff my dad passed down to me, friends who aren't here anymore, uh, my golf clubs, clothes. I mean everything. And the only thing I took was just one duffel bag full of clothes. Hopped in my car and I was gone. I just left all that stuff behind, and you know, it was off and running for the next couple of years, and you know, in and out of jail, catch a charge, um, and the little jail stints, the 2 weeks, the 30 days, they were just they were little recoup, you know, to get off the street and to get my bearings back. And then as soon as I left, it was right back to it, you know, and that was how it was for years. And in 2017, I caught uh, my first felony, right? And um, I did I did like 4 or 5 months in county waiting for the trial. Um, Went to trial, got found guilty on an F5
What's an F?
and fifth degree felony.
I mean, what was it for though?
I always make a joke out of this because I feel like I got screwed. I got cheated on my felony. It was a obstructing justice charge, a felony charge of obstructing justice, and um, they sentenced me to a like a halfway house, right? Um, and so I went there, and this place is actually where Ashley's from, over in Tiffin, and I did another 4 months or so there, 5 months there, and I tell you what, I took it serious. You know, it was you had your recovery classes, you know, and I gave it everything, and I was serious about wanting to change my life around. And then the day that I got out, we went to the bar and started drinking, you know, and I always until I got sober this time, I always separated drugs and alcohol. You know, I had a problem with drugs. I could still drink, right? And I didn't realize until later on how, you know, I'm an alcoholic, and that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're addicted to women, if you're addicted to men, if you're addicted to gambling, um,
I'm in
drugs,
GA.
alcohol.
I'm
You
in
know,
GA. I'm in
yeah,
GA. I'm in
yeah,
AA, and I go to NA. I have two different sponsors.
yeah,
I have one for AA. I have a sponsor for NA, and I'm getting a sponsor for GA.
yeah,
I do GA on the weekends. I do NA every day at noon. I'm in therapy. You know what I mean? Like I have
Yeah.
a psychiatrist. I am fucked in the head.
I get it, man. So am I. And I didn't know this stuff back then. You know, I didn't know that the alcoholic in me, the alcoholism in me is no different than the alcoholism in any other person who
Yep.
has the disease of alcoholism. And you know, so I always thought that I could drink. I always thought I could drink because my problem was the drugs, right? And that's what I did. I drank. I stayed off the hard stuff until uh, it just hit me perfect that one night, and you know, got to feeling good, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go out and get what I want to get, and it started that whole cycle up again. And um, in in 2019 was probably the longest year of my life. But so I get out in 2018, was just drinking, right? Decided to so this girl that I was seeing, she was going to meetings, and she was going uh she had a sponsor and stuff. And she said she hooks me up, lines me up to go to a meeting with this guy. I'd never met him before. And I agreed to go, you know. So I drop her off at her sponsor's house, and I'm supposed to go uh meet up with this guy, and we're going to go to a meeting together. I'm on my way to his house. So after I drop her off, this fear sets in of, you know, or this thought comes in. Maybe if I get a little bit of dope and just do some, it'll take the edge off and I'll be able to be myself, right? Going to a freaking a 12-step recovery meeting, talking about going and getting some dope just so I can take the edge off and be myself, right? So that's what I did. I drove out to a guy's house. I bought 2 packs of dope. And like I said, I'm normally a vein user. You use a needle. But I didn't this time because I didn't have, I've been off of this stuff for months now, you know.
Yeah.
Didn't have nothing like that. So I just pull over in a Wendy's. I snorted a pack. And I get about a block away from this guy's house and I blacked out. Luckily, I was at a 4-way stop. I was talking to my sister through the Bluetooth of my car, and um, I can just remember she's like, "Chris, what are you saying? I can't even understand what you're saying." And that was the last thing I remember. Um, Here I overdosed, but I was at a 4-way stop, so my body, when I went into overdose, my body locked up and my foot was still on the brake. Somebody called the cops. The cops come. My car was still in drive, so the cops couldn't open my door. They busted out my no, they busted out my driver window, put the car in park, opened the door, got me out, and I woke up in the back of the ambulance with a long rubber tube up my nose, down my throat, you know. And they took me to the hospital, and I told the cop what had happened. You know, I relapsed on this stuff. And he didn't arrest me for being honest. You know, told him what was going on. Still got some charges, but he didn't arrest me. He didn't take me to jail, so he let me go. Um, so I go back to my sister's house. I was staying there, and the next day I'm waiting for my dad to get off work so he can give me a ride to the impound lot because they towed my car away. And he gives me a ride down there, give him the money, they take me around. And this was January 2019. A lot of stuff happened in January. Got sober. Then, you know, this was the start of all this. But they had a tarp over my car because of the busted window, and it's cold and snowy outside. So they take me back there. I unlock the car. They take the tarp off, open the car door, and, you know, all the broken glass inside the car. And I get in the car and I look down on the floorboard, and in all that broken glass down there, I seen that second pack that I bought. The cops never seen it or didn't find it. So without even a thought of what happened the day before, I reach down and grab it. Didn't start my car yet. I opened it up. I snored it. Right. I'm driving back to my sister's house. I get to her house, and I was gonna pull down the alley because her garage is there in the alley, and I was gonna park in her garage because I didn't have a window. But I kind of nodded out, missed the alley, so I turned to the front of the house, and I was going to turn back around, and the same thing happened. Overdose. Um, the My dad was following me. My sister had just pulled up on the side of the house from picking my nieces up from school, and she seen what was going on. She run over. She yelled for my dad. My dad come over and pulled me out, and he smacked me up enough to bring me back. But my sister called the 911, and the same cop showed up, the same ambulance, and they told me, they're like, Chris, this is 2 days in a row. You need to do something here. You need to go get some help. And my response was, this is just 2 days. I don't have a problem. This is just a run of bad luck. There's some bad stuff. I'm fine. So I don't know if you've had family interventions, but I don't like them. And they held a little family intervention for me, and I'm always the one that I'll do whatever you say, just get off my back, And so that's what I did. I went into a detox, and I went into detox. Detox had just opened up there in Fremont, and I was one of the first groups to go in there, and I was just there for 10 days and got put on Vivitrol, and everybody was telling me, like, you can't get high on opiates when you're on Vivitrol. And hard-headed me, I had to find out for myself. So I leave, and I tried it, and I couldn't feel anything. But other people were telling me you can get high still on other stuff. So that was the first time I ever tried meth. And
I was just going to say meth.
Yeah, that was the first time I tried meth. And that was adding another thing to the buffet, So then I didn't go back for my second shot of Vivitrol. I did meth up until that wore off, and then I was doing both, back to heroin, fentanyl, and meth, and that was all of 2019. And like I said, I got sober in January of 2020.
That's a long year, my friend.
It was the longest year of my life, in and out of jail. My family cut me off, and it ultimately took, my mom has been my rock all my life. I'm a mama's boy. She'd do anything for me, and it took her doing the hardest thing that a mother ever has to do, cut their kid off. All she wanted to do was help me. All she wanted to do was just to have her son back. And, she had to cut me off, and she changed the locks on her door. I could remember begging when I'm hungry, just for her to make me a sandwich, leave it on the porch, like I'm an animal. That was the only way.
Did you ever see Basketball Diaries?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of, is how she had to cut him off. And
Yeah.
he was like, remember the one scene, he was crying at the door, slamming on the door.
Oh, yeah.
She had the little lock on it, and he was trying to reach in. And she was like, and then she ended up having to call the cops on him just to get him out of the hallway.
That scene hits me so hard because I could relate so well with it.
And I watched that movie like 100 times growing up, and I still became a drug addict.
Yeah.
Like, I watched that movie one of my friends was obsessed with Young Leo, and we watched that movie like every weekend. We would get drunk and watch that movie, and I learned 0 lessons from watching that movie.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that she cut you off, though, because obviously it was the best thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm out on my own. I got no car. I'm sleeping outside. It was me, a backpack, and my Carhartt jacket. And I was at McDonald's using the Wi-Fi. Like that's what I would do. I'd go from Wi-Fi spot to Wi-Fi. I called myself a little Wi-Fi bandit, because any money that I got, it wasn't going towards a phone bill, so I was using Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
and that girlfriend that I had that was going to meetings, that set me up to go to meet with that guy to go to a meeting. I had reached out to her because I knew she was sober, and I'll never forget what she asked me. And she asked me if I had God in my life, and my answer was, I believe God's here somewhere, but He doesn't want nothing with me, and that's where I was with it at the time. And she said, "You need to find Him. You really need to find Him, Chris." And so I don't know what happened from the time I hung that phone up to the 2 or 3 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was another couple people who were sober, and they called me up and they said, "Chris, you really want to get some help? We're willing to help you if you are wanting to get help." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." I just wanted the pain to stop. I just wanted to stop hurting. Um, Super alone, tired of living the way that I was, and I they came and picked me up, and they're like, "Look, we're gonna take you to the Sandusky Hospital, and you just tell them that you're suicidal, and they'll put you on a 72-hour hold, and in that time, we'll look for a bed for you at a treatment center." So they took me there. They found me a bed in a treatment center up in Elyria, Ohio, and it got to be the day that I was supposed to be at the treatment center, and I thought the treatment center was going to come pick me up from the hospital, and they wanted me there by 2 o'clock, and it was 1 o'clock, and I'm getting nervous because I know it's about 45 minutes to an hour drive from Sandusky to Elyria. I'm like, "Will you call them and see how about what time they're going to be here?" So they called, and they're like, "No, we don't come and pick up people. They have to get a ride here." And in that moment, I kind of like lost all hope. I was like, "Well, that's it." I was in that place. I had an abscess grow on my arm that they had to cut open. So I was there a couple extra days. I was maybe 6 days, 5 or 6 days sober. And I knew that this was my best chance of getting help. And if I was to leave that hospital, maybe I'd stay sober the rest of that day. But my track record is, I blow everything up. And if the opportunity presented itself, I would probably use again. I'd pick up. So, I'm forever grateful for them nurses because they pulled out of their own pocket and paid $80 for me to take a taxi from the Sandusky Hospital to that treatment center. And I had never had anybody do that for me. I barely even knew these people, and they did that out of their own kindness, and that helped me be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be here if they didn't do that. So I made it a point when I was at that treatment center, I sent them all a postcard, a thank you, for what they did for me. And I've went back there and held a couple groups for people who were in there. But yeah, man, it was unbelievable. It's those God moments started to happen all from that phone call.
Yeah,
Great.
I call them God shots.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different terms for it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But
my sister, she got me this book right here, God Stories, right? She got my name on it, God Stories, and she got that for me so I can all these little God moments. I get to write in this book and go back and read them because, there's been times in sobriety where I start to maybe think like God isn't there or something like that, and going back through and refilling up my spiritual bank. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see where you are, considering
Yeah,
everything you've been through.
yeah,
I mean, I've done a ton of interviews, but you're the first one that has told me they got hurt playing a sport and they were prescribed, oxycodone, whatever you want to call them,
yeah.
Percocets. I've heard other
No,
people prescribe them, but not from a sports related thing. And I relate a lot to that because I played sports. I never got hurt, so I never had to be prescribed. And how old are you?
36.
Okay, so you're a year younger than me, and that's the heyday of when you went to the doctors and they're like, tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 how much pain you're in. And depending on where you were on that scale, depended on how
Yeah,
much purpose that they were giving you.
yep, yep. And even the trials in sobriety have been tough. I uh, I've been I've been arrested 3 times in sobriety. Had to spend a couple weeks in jail just for wreckage of my past. And a lot of it was because I was too scared to pick up the phone and make a call to the courts. My sponsor's telling me to do it, and I'm still living in fear, not wanting to do it. And I had warrants that popped up. I was about a year sober, and I moved from over by Lake Erie to Columbus. I live in Columbus now, and um, I wasn't even down here a week, and I knew that I was going to have to go to a lot of meetings, meet some people, and get plugged in down here. I wasn't even here a week. My daughter, she called me up, Dad, can I stay with you at the new house? Yeah, absolutely. So she stayed with me a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Right, I get a call Monday afternoon from my daughter's aunt, and she told me that my daughter's mom was in a car accident and she got thrown from the car and she passed away. And so here I am with my 8-year-old daughter upstairs, and I got this phone call, and I'm wondering, how in the heck am I supposed to tell my daughter that her mom just died? And that was a rough patch in sobriety. I mean, it was months of driving from Columbus up to Norwalk to go to court for custody, and I got children's services coming to the house. Um, we went to her funeral and uh, met a sheriff at her mom's trailer to get some of her stuff because I was living in sober living before I moved down here, and um, the sheriff runs my name, and a warrant had popped up, and this has been a year and a half, almost 2 years uh, after being sober for almost 2 years. Warrant pops up, and they took me to jail, and uh, craziest thing, I didn't pick up. I've been hit with some stuff in sobriety that uh, I used to use any excuse, and you kind of touched on that earlier. Any excuse possible to pick up or to use, and the miracle of not picking up, one day at a time is amazing. It's absolutely amazing to take people like you and I from the places where we've been and to make us, productive people in the world is truly a miracle.
Yep. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think I'd be sitting here if I didn't hit my bottom. You know what I mean? Like the road I was going down. I mean, obviously, like I shouldn't have been snorting 120 milligrams worth of 30s while I'm going 90 miles per hour. The most dangerous thing happened was Xanax made me black out a lot. And I was addicted to Xanax just as much as addicted to any pill. And there was one time where I was driving from where I lived in PA to South Jersey, and you're on the PA Turnpike for about almost 60 miles exactly before I got to get on the Philadelphia Expressway. And I'm driving. I got my dog in the back seat because I had picked out trees that I was going to drive into because I was so desperate to die that I was picking out trees to drive into, make it look like an accident. And if I brought my dog with me, then I wasn't going to hurt her, so I wouldn't do it. So I would always bring my dog with me so that I wasn't alone with my thoughts where I was actually thinking that way. And I was withdrawing really bad. I'm like, well, I'll pop a Xanax and then I'll do this drive and I won't be hurting as bad if I pop a Xanax. I took like 2 Xanax or 3 Xanax bars. And I remember seeing the mile marker and I was like, okay, I'm 30 miles away from my exit. And then I came to like a second later and I saw the mile marker and I was 30 miles past my exit. I went for 60 miles in a complete blackout going 90 miles per hour.
Yeah.
I don't know how I survived. I don't know how
that's happened to me, not for that long, but that's happened to me plenty of times.
You're talking 45 minutes of being completely blacked out and coming to like, where the hell am I? Yeah. Like a PA Turnpike is all mountains. Like I should have been driven into a tree for real.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how I did that. And I was driving an old cop car at the time. I drove an old Crown Vic, and cops are less likely to pull me over. I drove by a cop one time going 110 miles per hour, and he didn't pull out. And I was like, either he thinks I'm a cop or he's taking a nap. Those are the only things that cop sitting back in those tree lines are doing. Either he thinks I'm a cop, because it was an old cop car that converted into a regular car. So I know that I'm not just lucky. I do have a higher power that was watching over me and keep me alive when I should have died.
Yeah, them thoughts of suicide are real, man. I've had them too, and it was like I was too much of a selfish coward to actually do it. You know, I knew I could have if I really wanted to, but like deep down, I didn't want to die. But if I was to die, like I welcome death. Pretty much.
What I heard in the meeting that really set with me was I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to be conscious anymore.
Yeah. Even the people who I was partying with are telling me that I'm doing too much. I need to calm down or I'm gonna die. And I didn't care, you know, and they're like, you got a family that loves you. You got a daughter now, you know, and you know, my response was always, you know, at least I won't have to be here to see their sadness, you know.
And I relate a lot to you because I lost a fiance to suicide. Yeah. So, you know, we didn't have a kid together or anything, but when I found out, I went deep into my alcoholism. I moved to North Carolina on a whim with my brother, and my brother's straight as an arrow. Like he drinks here and there. He's not even a big drinker. He can outdrink me if we're playing games like beer pong and shit. He can drink more than I can. But he's nowhere near an alcoholic or an addict. Yeah. And we drove to North Carolina. We found a place to live in Durham. And I found out she died from her mom calling me. And I went straight to the ABC store, the liquor store, and bought a handle of Jack and proceeded to drink all of it. I found a bar that was in smoking distance, like a nice little 3-minute walk away. And I was at that bar 6-7 nights a week getting hammered. And then when you hang out at the bar long enough, you find cocaine. So I started doing coke. And because I couldn't get pills where I lived because I didn't know anybody, but I sure as hell knew where the alcohol was and where the cocaine was. And then it got to the point where on payday, I would Western Union my friend money, and then he would overnight me pills in the mail. The shit we used to do, man.
I know it. I made a little contraption one time back in school. It was a pen, right? And I put a little blocker at the bottom of the pen. I would fill the inside with powder with Coke, and I'm in class, you know, and I have my head down, and I put little lines on my book, and I'm doing Coke in school. Oh, geez.
Yep. We definitely shouldn't be here. And I'm glad that we are here, and I'm glad we had this conversation. Yeah. Definitely related a lot, bro. I appreciate you sitting down and being so open and honest about your story. And yeah, man, glad you're still here to be able to tell your story.
Yeah, man, it's a great meeting you. Glad to have a new friend.
Yep, sounds good, but I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bud. See ya.
All right, see ya.